I really wasn't gonna do it.
Lights dimmed in the hall. A single spotlight hovered over the center of the stage. Sugar Ray Leonard, age 69, walked in, gloves slung over one shoulder, sweat glistening under the warmth of the bulbs, memories heavy in his heart. Ringside seats in a sprawling arena, every eye fixed on him.
Sugar Ray.
Oh, what exchanges by Leonard.
Yes.
Leonard going toe-to-toe with Jerome.
The silence stretched like a rope, tight and humming. Tonight, for the first time in decades, he was going to name them, the 6 boxers he hated the most. Mike Tyson. He scared me, Leonard admitted, his voice unwavering. Not in the way one might typically imagine, but in the profound sense that his mere presence had the power to seize your breath. Leonard, 4 years Tyson's senior, vividly recalled their first encounter in a gym. The rhythmic snap of Tyson's gloves, the raw power behind each punch, and the growing guttural roar that emanated from him, a sound that unequivocally declared his belief in his own invincibility. The hypothetical matchup of Tyson versus Leonard was a constant hum in the background of boxing culture, a fixture in barbershop comic book debates and among devoted fans. Leonard harbored a deep aversion to the notion that someone so raw and relentlessly aggressive could overshadow finesse, grace, and heart. He detested the idea that Tyson, in his brutal efficiency, made the sport appear ugly. He even found himself hating his own feelings of diminishment in the shadow of Tyson's larger-than-life persona. He punched fear into the very corners of the ring, into the faces of champions, Leonard whispered, leaning forward, the memory still potent. And that fear I utterly despised. I hated how incredibly effective it was. This fear, he elaborated, wasn't just about the physical threat, but the psychological dominance Tyson exerted. It was the fear of being outmatched by a force that seemed to defy traditional boxing tenets. Leonard, a master of strategy and elegant movement, struggled with the unsettling reality that Tyson's unbridled aggression often rendered such attributes secondary. He admired begrudgingly Tyson's absolute self-belief, a conviction that radiated outward and often paralyzed his opponents even before the first bell. This internal conflict between admiration and disdain, between the old guard and the new, was a constant battle for Leonard. He understood that Tyson represented a paradigm shift, a raw, untamed power that threatened to redefine the very essence of boxing. And that, more than any punch, was what truly scared Sugar Ray Leonard. John Sullivan. Leonard paused, a heavy silence descending. Sullivan, he finally named, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. An old-school brute, but undeniably smart, calculated, and dirty when he felt he needed to be. He wasn't referring to Bernard Hopkins, but to John Sullivan, a boxer notorious for his elbows, illegal shoves, and a look in his eye that promised he'd cross any line. Leonard recalled a particular fight, years ago, where Sullivan cheated with just enough subtlety, low blows delivered when the referee's gazes were diverted, wrestling at the ropes, bending the rules until the very shape of fairness became unrecognizable. What Leonard truly hated was how Sullivan made him question everything, whether skill, honor, or integrity held any real meaning in the sport. "When you step into that ring," he declared, each word sharp and pointed, "you're meant to be better than the dirt." Sullivan, he forced me to question that fundamental belief. He felt a profound disappointment, a betrayal of the unwritten code of boxing. Sullivan's tactics chipped away at the sanctity of the sport, replacing it with a cynical view where winning at any cost seemed to be the only objective. This was more than just a defeat in a match. It was a blow to the very spirit of competition, leaving Leonard with a lingering bitterness and a deep-seated contempt for a fighter who prioritized victory over virtue. Jerome Led Better. The discussion shifted to a lesser-known fighter, Led Better, whose name brought a surge of intensity to Leonard's voice. Led Better hit like a hammer wrapped in leather, he declared, emphasizing not just strength, but precise timing and pure malice. Their encounters in the early 2000s were brutal, Ledbetter, a rapidly rising star, fought with relentless pressure, elbowing, busting Leonard's lip, and dragging him into unforgiving clinches in the corners. Leonard confessed his profound hatred for Ledbetter's fighting style, which made every punch feel like a personal betrayal. For Leonard, boxing was an art form, a dance of poetry, counterpunches, and rhythmic precision. Ledbetter, however, was chaos personified, a disruptive force that tore at the very fabric of his boxing philosophy. The memory of a cracked rib, a torn cheek, and the hollowed feeling after their fight still resonated with him. He wasn't just an opponent, Leonard stated emphatically. He was an infection. And I hated infections. Tommy Cattle. Rodriguez's nickname, Cattle, suited the brute. Leonard's fury flickered. Tommy Rodriguez thought ring was like rodeo. Charging bulls, swinging wildly. Every time Rodriguez stepped forward, Leonard felt corners closing in. There was no finesse, no dance, just push, bulldoze, collision. Leonard hated that style. Hated how predictability betrayed brutality. Rodriguez never waited for you to hit. He wanted to hit first, hardest. Leonard hated feeling powerless. With Rodriguez, he did. Luis Fernandez. Sugar Ray Leonard, known for his smooth style in the ring, didn't always appreciate the same from his opponents. Luis Fernandez, for example, was one boxer Leonard openly disliked. Fernandez was a master of deception, a smooth talker who presented himself as a respectful strategist, discussing decimals and techniques. However, his actions in the ring often contradicted his words. Leonard recalled how Fernandez's gloves would subtly slip low between rounds, and his fists would rip ribs between what seemed like polite exchanges. This artifice, this cloak of sportsmanship hiding thorns, deeply bothered Leonard. He saw Fernandez as a chess master who baited plays with lies, using feints that became fouls and footwork that led to trips. The post-fight aftermath was particularly telling for Leonard. He remembered his body being bruised more than any opponent ever, not just from the physical blows, but from the realization of how thoroughly he had been fooled. This wasn't merely about losing or taking hits, it was about the insidious nature of the betrayal. Leonard's hatred for Fernandez stemmed from this profound sense of being manipulated and deceived. He despised the hypocrisy, the way Fernandez presented one image while operating with a completely different, underhanded approach. It wasn't the competitive spirit of boxing that angered him, but the deliberate violation of an unspoken code of conduct. For Leonard, integrity was paramount, and Fernandez's actions represented a stark betrayal of that principle, making him one of the few opponents Leonard truly hated. Marcus the Wall. Peters. The final name, Peters, resonated with the boxing aficionados present. Peters, a formidable presence in the ring, was known for his unyielding high guard, a veritable human wall. He wasn't celebrated for his agility or fluid movement, but rather for his sheer, immovable weight, a stifling force that absorbed and nullified his opponent's attacks. Leonard's disdain for Peters stemmed primarily from the way Peters consistently robbed fights of their inherent momentum. Every attempt Leonard made to dance, to maneuver, to pivot was met with Peters' unwavering resolve. He deflected, blocked, and held, effectively neutralizing Leonard's artistic flair and dynamic footwork. Leonard felt his own boxing artistry was not being appreciated, but rather punished by Peters' unwavering solidity and static approach to the sport. The frustration wasn't just personal for Leonard. He keenly felt how Peters' style affected the audience. He hated that Peters' fights often elicited sighs and a general leaning back from spectators who yearned for the excitement of a true battle, a spark of boxing genius. Instead, Peters, with his unyielding defense and lack of offensive initiative, seemed to extinguish that spark, leaving behind a sense of anticlimax and a yearning for the electrifying exchanges that defined the sport at its best. Peters, in Leonard's eyes, was a stifling force, a boxer who prioritized containment over confrontation, and in doing so, diminished the spectacle of boxing itself. The lights dimmed more, and Leonard turned, walking out the ring, gloves in hand. No speeches, no apologies, just steps echoing in the silence. At 69, he finally named them, the 6 boxers he hated the most, not to judge them now, but to free himself. And as he exited the hall, the echo of cheers and whispers merged with the crack of ropes and thud of canvas. In that noise, in that final moment, Leonard understood. Hate had been his teacher, and tonight, he let the lesson go.